Well, I grew up in Detroit, or at least in Hamtramck, which is just outside of Detroit. Spent most of my time in the area, and of course, it's very difficult to grow up in the state of Michigan without looking towards Ann Arbor and thinking about possibly one day attending that university. So when after I made the rounds from the BA and the MA, the opportunity came along so that I could attend the University of Michigan. My first days as a student at the University of Michigan was actually in Detroit. I was teaching in Detroit and attended classes at the Rackham building, which of course is still around, but I don't think there are classes from the university there. But that's where I started working on my degree at the university and in the Rackham building in Detroit. That was the beginning of the opportunity. Now, after that, I moved to Ypsilanti, which is near Ann Arbor, and at the time I was continuing to work on my doctorate. But unfortunately, the school district could only allow me to leave, I guess, one day a week. I could leave work early, about an hour early, and get to Ann Arbor and take a class, or I could come a little later one day a week and take a class, and it was simply going to take me too long to finish a degree. And so I was lucky enough to be offered the opportunity to come to Ann Arbor and work in there in the School of Education. And I had my first job was supervising student teachers, and I did that. But this then allowed me the opportunity to be able to go down the hall and take a class and then come back to my office and work, which then allowed me to move and finish my degree a lot faster than I would have had I continued in public schools, taking sort of one class per semester. I would say because I came in as an adult, so to speak, not that most undergraduates are not adults, but it was a little later in life. I was married. I had one child at the time, and so I think my focus was a lot clearer than certainly it was a lot clearer than when I was in undergrad school, because they kept asking me, what are you going to major in? And I said, I don't know. I mean, how do people decide a major? How are those choices made? And it turned out that at some point I made that choice based upon the area where I had the most courses. And as an undergraduate, I was a major in biology and a minor in sociology and psychology. That's how I sort of made that decision. But I don't think I was as good a student as an undergraduate or even at the master's level than when I was a PhD. Then I knew what I wanted to do, and as I said, it's going to school later, a little later in life, is a different path than when you start out as either, I mean, at the undergraduate or the master's level. So in that sense, I worked hard and knew what I had to do, and I was working, I mean, I had a full-time job and while I was going to school. So when you work at that level, you, just by nature of the work, the timing, etc., you dedicate yourself to being a good student. And so I guess I would say it was okay. Well, and when you're in Ann Arbor as a student, I think that there are lots of things that go by without being noticed because you are so focused as a student. Um, and it's a surrounding for you, it's an environment for you. Um, when you shift to the other side of the table and you become the instructor, you move from a junior faculty member to a senior faculty member, you realize that there's a lot more to Ann Arbor than you've been able to either realize or experience. And so uh, from that standpoint, I mean, in the early years as a junior faculty member, early 1960s, we had the BAM strike. I was there. I was in the middle of that. Of course, the argument was certainly that we needed to increase the number of minority students and faculty. And we got through that very well. Thought we did very well. Later on, there were forces that came about, some state laws, some pushback, that sort of said that we really can't continue to focus just on one particular group. And moving in from the 1960s, early 70s, to a sizable number of students and faculty members, we've sort of moved back from that now. It's gone full circle, and I think once again we're raising the issues of, do we need to do more in terms of attracting minority students, or the notion of trying to attract students so that it matches the population within the state.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts about how the university could do that?
Well, traditionally we track the notion of expectation based upon representation. So the population, the African American population in Michigan is probably close to somewhere between 16 and 18%. So, and we're nowhere near that as when you look, for example, at campus. I mean, we may be 3 to 4%. In the 60s, the demand from the student was at least 10%. I mean, I think everybody realized that 18% was probably very difficult to get to, but at least the negotiations were centered around about 10%. We're probably down now more close to 4 to 5% or less. So we've slipped back from where we were. And I mean, I think it's a reasonable proposition for state universities to look like the people in the state, at least the sort of representation. And we've got lots of efforts going now. We have an outreach center on campus, and I think they're making some efforts to sort of meet that, even with the Prop 2 and other views that people have about what a university ought to look like. I think the general consensus is it ought to look like the state. The favorite memory, I guess, that I have has to do with the affirmative action case that came about, because it was my sense at that time that given the point in time of where we were, it would have been fairly easy for the university to say, let's just pull back and not really jump into this fight. But the voices there said, we're going to take it on. I mean, we believe in what we're doing. We're going to take it on, and we'll take it head on. And in that first ruling where we won, I felt we won mostly. We lost a little bit. But the really good view for me was watching Mary Sue Coleman on the diag, committing the university to, no matter what happens, we are committed to doing what we are doing. And I gave a presentation at a conference shortly after that, and someone asked me about it, and the only thing I can think of at this moment was at that point was to say to them that I've had several jobs, I've worked in a number of places, but this is really the first time that I can stand and say that I'm really proud of where I work and watching what they do. And so if I wanted to pick out a memory, that was one for me that said, you know, we could have folded very easily and said, well, we'll wait and see what happens. But that is not what happened. I mean, we said, you know, if you want to, we believe in what we're doing, and if you want to fight, we'll fight.
Yeah.
And it was delightful to see us win a little bit, you know. They came back at us at another time with Prop 2, but even there we say, you know, we're going to continue doing what we think is the right thing to do. And as I said, when you're at a university like that, or any workplace, I think one can look at that and say, you know, I'm really proud of that. I feel good working here.
Yeah.
That makes a difference. I am optimistic about the future of Detroit because I've always felt that a big city for any state is really the lifeline of the state. And it's very difficult to function or to have a vibrant state without a major city in it. And if one somehow squeezes the main artery of the big city, the city starts to die. And as it dies, suburbs cannot carry a state. The small cities cannot carry a state. And so, yes, I am optimistic. I think it's got to be. It's got to come back. And so, I'm optimistic along with lots of other people. As someone who was there as a student and now as a faculty member, um, I guess I feel that it is our obligation um, to help all of the cities within the state, but especially Detroit, because I think, as I said, it's a main artery, and that we have to do whatever we can to make sure it survived. I mean, economically, our economics department needs to be in there talking to people about how do we make this thing work. From the education point of view, we have lots of people, we have lots of programs. We could probably do even more in that area, because I often say that if we're as good as we think we are, we need to be making more contributions in areas where they're needed within the state. And I think we're as good as we think we are, but that of course is a biased opinion.
Yeah.
That because I have a fair amount of University of Michigan apparel, wherever we go on vacation, out of the country, when you have a University of Michigan shirt on, or something, or a cap, you're likely to hear somebody in a foreign language saying, "Go blue." I mean, wherever you travel in the world. Now, the one thing I've also noticed that you find in some places, while they don't relate that as directly to the university, you still see the Michigan apparel on kids. And if you say "Go blue," they're not sure what you mean, but obviously somebody has given them a shirt with the University of Michigan on it. And you know, I've said this on many occasions, but in one of my first classes at the University of Michigan, the professor made a comment where he said that Michigan on a degree is like sterling on silver. And as a young student, I thought, well, you know, why would you say something like that? Now that I've been around for a while, I realize that wherever you go, if you have that degree and you are from the University of Michigan, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
So he was right. It is like sterling-on-silver. It's been a very good ride. I have been there a long time. I started with President Harlan Hatcher through, I think he was followed by President Fleming, President Shapiro, a couple of interims, President Duderstadt, Bollinger, Mary Sue Coleman, and so I've seen a number of presidents throughout there, and an equal number of athletic directors that I work with. And as I said, it's a dynamic university. It's steeped in tradition. For people who don't understand or relate well to tradition, I think sometimes they have difficulty understanding it. But you know, when people say that's not how we do it at Michigan, it does mean something, and it is different. And so, as I said, for me, it's, I don't know, it's 45, 40, depending on how one counts it, 45 years. I taught my first class in 64, and that's about 50, 51 years that I've seen it over time, and have come to realize that while there are lots of universities, the University of Michigan is special, and it has some very special things, and the tradition of the university, I think, carries it a long way. And it's good for the state, and it's good for people who land there somehow, either as a student. I mean, there's so many people that I've encountered who only came for a summer institute, but they remember Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan. So it's great to have been a citizen of the state who, as I said, looked towards Ann Arbor, and then as a faculty member to be part of it, and to just simply be able to enjoy and celebrate the traditions of the university.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have advised them, I think, over the years, but as I said, I think the real advice that I have for a lot of them is to recognize the value of the university, and this was particularly true with student athletes, that you have an opportunity to get a world-class education, and you're going to cheat yourself if you go through there and not grab everything you can and everything that's possible and available to you, because you'll look back one day and realize what an opportunity you missed if not. So while you're here, get whatever this university can give you, and you'll be delighted.